when Steve Jobs was out, working in his garage, he had probably his parents saying, "What the heck are you doing? Go get a real job. Why are you doing this?" And he made the choice to stay with it. He blocked out those who were telling him what he should be and what he should do. But it's got to come from within. We have to be able to say, I'm going to choose a different path. I'm going to choose to take responsibility for my own life and my own actions, not be a victim. Blockbuster was almost a mirror image of 7-Eleven. People lose so much value in their false perception that Netflix crushed Blockbuster. Netflix is great. I'm a big Netflix fan. What happened to Blockbuster was almost a mirror image of what happened to 7-Eleven. Kind of lost their way in defining the business, what they wanted to be. Had a lot of debt, just like 7-Eleven. Got caught up in a financial crisis, just like 7-Eleven. Forced to file for bankruptcy, just like 7-Eleven.
What are you most proud of?
I'll tell you what makes me proud.
Jim Keys, thank you for coming by. You are a former CEO of 7-Eleven and Blockbuster, philanthropist, student of life, a commercial pilot, a global business leader. And I think I was more interested about, obviously, the what you've done in the corporate world and the business, but how much you are so embodied to education and learning. And the 1% podcast is all about self-improvement. And I know that you use that in the book. The Japanese would talk about self-improvement. And I think over your life, with the hardships and the adversity that you went through, I thought that you were a perfect guest to have on the show. So as you are the first CEO that's ever been on this podcast, I want to say that I'm eternally grateful for you coming on the show.
I'm happy to be here. I like what you're doing because I really do believe that anyone has the potential to do anything they want to do, and you're spreading that message. So it's a good chance for me to help you, and you help me spread the word.
Thank you. Thank you so much. One thing that I did read about is this subtle quote that you had, and it was in the very beginning. Mankind must live to learn before we learn to live. And I wanted your thoughts and you to be able to explain that and expand on that more, because it's such a subtle quote, but I think a lot of people try to live in a way where they don't really learn, or they're learning throughout their life and trying to live.
Well, I'm going to take it even deeper for you. If you think about mankind, humanity overall, where we are in our evolution, we are still blowing each other up with tanks. think about how crazy that is, that we've evolved so much that we can put a man on the moon, we can harness the power of nuclear energy, and yet we can't figure out how to get along, right? And when I say we have to live to learn first, probably, I think if you dig into all of the issues known to mankind, most of them stem from fear and ignorance. And my point is that's curable. We can cure ignorance, and we can personally take responsibility ourselves for living a life of learning so that we eliminate the fear that leads us to anger and leads us to hatred and leads us to want to kill each other. It's just so foolish in the context of the overall opportunity that humanity has to live and enjoy life. Why are we doing this? So that's my point, that we can, each of us, live a life of learning. And if we do that individually, take responsibility, it's like turning on a light, that when you're afraid of the dark, you turn on the light. And that's what knowledge is. That's what learning is. Why don't we all turn on the lights so we all realize that we have nothing to fear?
Do you think that, because I know that fear and power are very easy constructs to really get consumed by, and how we want power. And when people have money, they want to the thing that they look for next, it seems to be, is power. How much can they rule over people? Do you believe in a way that they are ignorant of their potentially own ego, of how much they want to rule over other people, or how much they want to do with other people, as opposed to actually seeing what's best for humanity?
I think that's a tough one. We're digging deep now. I don't know what drives some people, of course, probably very different things, to seek power. But what I find and have found through my life is a lot of those people seeking power are fearful people. You wouldn't think so. But look at some throughout history, some of the most outrageous leaders that have done some horrific things are really fearful individuals inside. And they're trying to get control largely because of their own fear. They feel that they need that control over other people to protect themselves. This is a very human trait. And it stems, I actually talk about in my book, the caveman brain. Because as cavemen, we had natural predators. So we had to use a portion of our brain that protected us from being eaten or being killed by another caveman, right? And that triggers that fight or flight reaction, that need to take control, that need to have power. Yet today, if you think about the evolution of mankind, we don't have natural predators. And surely we shouldn't have to be our own predators, right? If you think about it. So why can't we foster a sense of collaboration for success, collective success, rather than reverting back to our caveman brain and saying, it's me or you, buddy? You know, I prefer to think that humanity has evolved to the point that it could be, it's us, buddy. Let's both succeed.
Yeah. And it seems, I don't know, I notice it sometimes where in a world where we selfishly want our own success and don't understand that by Gary Vee is another inspiration of mine. And he had this phrase where he said, by building the biggest building in town, you don't do that by tearing down or crashing other people's buildings. You help them build also their own buildings, and they in return will help you build your building that you want to build.
Yeah.
And it seems that we'd rather selfishly fulfill our own desires or our own success rather than helping another person.
Well, again, it's fear. It's fear that my success has to come at the expense of someone else, because I'm not confident enough that I can grow together with them and 1 + 1 = 3. Most of us feel that that doesn't really work. It's me versus you. And you can see that a lot in the political landscape, not only of our country, but the whole world. You can see this win-lose mentality. You know, I have to defend myself. I have to protect myself. Why? Because I'm afraid they'll take something from me. As opposed to, let's sit down together and figure out a better way that we can lift each other up, to your point. It is, again, it's a very human trait to have that fear. And the purpose of my book is to literally drive this point that the future is in your hands. That means individually, each of us take that responsibility to understand we can manage the way we react to macro environmental circumstances or anything that happens. We can manage that. Why don't we? Why don't we, instead of reverting to our caveman self and shrinking back out of fear or fighting out of fear, why can't we look for ways to help each other succeed?
Yeah. What are some other, if you guys haven't, picked up the book, I definitely recommend that you pick up Education is Freedom. It's an incredible book so far. I haven't gone through the whole book yet, but even in the first couple chapters, it's incredibly impactful in terms of just kind of seeing your life and what you went through and realizing that anything is truly possible. And I wanted to ask you, as we've talked a little bit about humanity and you've experienced humanity and seen a lot of different people What are some other problems or struggles that we now face in humanity that you've seen?
I think there are many. If you think about everything from the way we are educating people, because we have various stages of evolution in our learning. Some countries are doing quite well. Other countries, even the United States, crazy enough, the United States is in the middle of the pack or below in developed nations for our education. And you say, why is that? We're one of the richest, we may be the richest nation in the world. Why are we not educating our own people? Whole host of issues there. But then you look at whole continents like Africa that have not yet been able to embrace education in the way we have in other more developed portions of the world. And that represents huge opportunity for humanity to evolve in a way with the power of technology. Starlink, as an example, will light up the far corners of the earth. So now a little kid growing up in a small village in Central Africa can, on their phone, have access to more learning than I had growing up in a suburb of Boston. It's an incredibly powerful opportunity. So education is one. The opportunity to help our climate is another. I laugh because one would think that as humans, we would all collectively want to make our world a better place. We wouldn't want to trash it, right? Yeah. The place we live. And yet it's such a polarizing topic. If I was to say climate change, if I was to say global warming, those words would evoke a response in people, either positive or negative. And the reality is, this is our only home right now until we are successful in finding another planet, perhaps. But why wouldn't humanity want to come together in ways that we can help just make our planet a cleaner place? Even if there is no such thing as a climate change, if you don't believe at all in the science behind the possibility of a warming planet or the dangers of pollution, I think we can all agree pollution's not good. Why would we want to live in a dirty place, right? So many of these issues that humanity faces get caught up in the narrative, and we start fighting about the words rather than the actions. I mean, you want one classic example?
Absolutely.
Our nation right now is all in a tizzy about what are kids being taught? What are they reading? Oh my gosh, look at the books that are showing up in libraries. This is terrible. We have to do something. Are they being indoctrinated, right? And those are a lot of serious concerns. And I don't mean to make light of those concerns, because some parents are particularly upset about those things. And yet the reality is 50% of the 8th graders in America today in our public school systems are functionally illiterate. And so it's kind of like, while we're worried about what they're reading, perhaps we should worry that they're reading. Yeah. You know, we should have 100% literacy. And once we have our kids actually reading and focus on that priority, then perhaps we should worry about what they're reading. And it's just a matter of the narrative. So while we're focusing on, one thing over here, we're missing the bigger issue over here, that collectively, if we put aside our politics, we put aside our ideological differences, we could come together and fix so many of the challenges that humanity faces.
Sure. Do you think that social media has something to do with that? With the reason why kids aren't reading? It's easier to scroll on TikTok or Instagram than it is to read a book. And as somebody who, I suffer from ADD and ADHD, it's very hard for me. Like, I've had to read some of the chapters over just because, like, I wanted to be able to implement into my brain of comprehension. And I guess, do you think that social media is to blame for that?
Again, we can blame and we can look for excuses. Yeah. Or we can say, wait a minute, technology is changing the way we learn. So maybe rather than fear it, maybe we should embrace it. And is there a way to use technology to advance our ability to read? Our current system was based on basically the mass production of educated students. It was like the Model T. When they created the Model T, they created a world where everything had to be, you know, it's like you can have any color as long as it's black in the original Model T, because they had this production line. They were just stamping them out. And they built our education system based on that same thing. So if you fit 1 inch outside of the standard bell curve, then, you know, someone with ADD or someone with dyslexia or someone with other learning disabilities kind of get pushed aside or left behind. In this world of technology, the content can get delivered based on the way you're best receiving it. So maybe you're one of these learners that needs rapid stimulus. That's fine.
Yeah.
We can deliver that content in a way that can elevate your learning and elevate your reading comprehension and ability.
Yeah.
We're just not using those tools in that way today. We're still forcing everybody into a one-size-fits-all conformity for the way we teach and learn.
Yeah. I think wanted to switch gears in terms of one of you know, what I read in your early childhood, and how you talked about the adversity is a chance for opportunity and growth. And I think knowing what you went through early on, I think it's admirable that you chose the path that you did, because a lot of other people would have chosen the other side.
Yeah.
And they would have chosen to do things that would have harmed their life instead of actually built their life. And I think especially with your, you know, losing your dad at the age of 12 and your parents getting divorced at such a young age, and, you know, witnessing some counts I read of abuse early on, that you could have easily went the other way. And I wanted to know, where did this mindset come from at such an early age to really choose this path of adversity is a chance for opportunity and a chance for growth, as opposed to the other side of what it could have been?
Well, you said the magic word, choice.
Yeah.
And this is what too often we forget, each of us individually forgets, that the subtitle of my book, The Future is in Your Hands. And somehow I realized at a very young age, and perhaps it was because I had older brothers. And I saw my older brothers sometimes make that other choice and feel like they were the victim of the circumstance. And I remember just watching that as a kid unfold and seeing them, you know, perhaps one of my brothers would get in a little trouble or do some bad things. And I remember thinking that nobody's a victim here. But if you feel like a victim, you will make that other choice, and it will affect your life. I just literally chose to have a different path. I said, I'm not going to be a victim. I can do whatever I want. I'll figure this out. And I do believe that anyone is capable of that, but it's got to come from within. We have to be able to say, I'm going to choose a different path. I'm going to choose to take responsibility for my own life and my own actions, not be a victim.
Yeah. Was it motivating and inspiring in a way to see what you went through? Was that like a driving factor? I know sometimes the uberly successful people, sometimes their driving factors can come from many things, either high insecurity, or in terms of like what they went through as a kid, usually is the driving factor. Like, I don't want to go back to a life of struggle and adversity.
Yeah, I think it was in some ways an advantage. The name of my book is Education is Freedom. I had freedom.
Yeah.
And it's a crazy way to think about it, but while the kids down the street who had very comfortable, very safe family life, they had to be in it dark. I had no one to say you have to be in it dark. I had no one to say you have to go to bed or you're not going to be, you know, ready for school in the morning. So my freedom actually turned into responsibility. it made me realize if I stay up too late, I'm going to be tired all day in school. And it forced me to have self-discipline in a way that someone else had that discipline imposed upon them, right? And so I think that it turned out to be an advantage. Now, I don't recommend to parents, just let your kids run loose, let them figure it out on their own. But I think the net of all of this is what some people look at when they look at my life. They say, oh, how horrible. I think it was an advantage. It gave me a sense of independence and responsibility that I probably wouldn't have had if I grew up in a more comfortable environment.
Yeah. And I noticed that, especially, I don't know, there was just this certain of, I think, just admiration and respect when I read that for Christmas, the church brought food to your house because they thought you were poor.
Yeah.
And instead you saw that yourself as rich. And
yeah.
Which is crazy to see, because knowing, you know, the childhood that you went through and how you were raised and the conditions that you lived in, you saw yourself in a completely different light. And obviously it manifested into everything that you became later on, which to some people would be like, I might need to be a little bit more grateful for the things that I have. And I think that seems to be a struggle in terms of humanity, is that we aren't really as grateful as we want to be, or we hope to be.
Very true. Yeah. And it keeps coming back. If you notice a recurring theme of freedom. My friends had money. I had freedom. My friends had beautiful game rooms with the best of everything. And it was fun to go play at their house. But I had junk cars in my yard. And we had the freedom to use our imagination in those junk cars and create these mystical voyages that we would make as if we were driving across country, sitting in a junk car with no windshield.
Yeah.
But it was fun. And it was that ability to use what I had to create my own identity that really gave me that sense of independence and a feeling that I'm not poor. I remember, as you noticed in the book, I was shocked.
Yeah.
The very idea that I was poor. What does that even mean? Because I never felt that way. I was poor in monetary sense, but I was rich in freedom.
Yeah. Because I always struggle with this idea of, I hear so many people have this one phrase of money buys happiness. And the more people that I interview that are successful and are financially wealthy, they, on the other hand, would say that it isn't the money that buys happiness, because in the way that you put it is that the freedom is and the education that you get and the education that you learn and the things that you accrue throughout your life really are the things that can buy your happiness, of how much knowledge you have. And I guess I would want to say, why do people believe that monetary success or monetary freedom is equal to happiness?
Yeah, I think it's one of those learned experiences from our environment that we're in. There's a sense of other people determining what your identity is. Oh, you're poor. You should be unhappy and miserable. Oh, why? I'll give you a great example. I was in Vietnam once on a mission with the American Red Cross. I had the privilege of sitting on the board with the American Red Cross for a while, and we went to this little village, and the village had, small huts. They'd probably never seen anyone that looked like us come into the village. Dirt floors. I was with a group of fellow Americans, and a couple of the Americans that were on the trip were kind of miserable the whole time. We had a lot of, mosquitoes. We're in malaria country. Everybody was it was very hot. We're on a bus over these bumpy roads. So people were kind of pretty unhappy, right? Because we live in an environment that's very different from that. We get to this little village, and I'll never forget the experience of walking into this village. And one of my friends observed these families, and they started walking toward us. And she's, oh, it's so sad. How pitiful. These poor people. Look at the way they're living. And what I experienced was very, very different. I looked at those people, especially the children walking toward me. I saw absolute joy in their heart, in their eyes. They were happy. They were excited to see, this group of people that they had never seen before. And yes, they were poor, but they didn't know they were poor, and they didn't know that they were unhappy or they're supposed to be unhappy. Look at the way you're living. You should be miserable. And that's the reality of humanity, that we each are in control of our own happiness. Mm-hmm. Some of us may determine that we have to have things, but if we get caught up in that, sometimes we find the more things we have, more things we even want, and we never achieve that sense of real happiness. So I think the best way for anyone to realize what happiness could be, find one of the poorest villages in the world and go visit it. And you'll look at true joy on the part of many, many people that you'll say, wow, how do I get that? I want that. And I equate it back to freedom. Mm-hmm. And in its own way, that they're enjoying the freedom that they have to live and to do what they want to do within their experience.
Yeah. I know that education is very big to you in terms of freedom, but what else does freedom include?
I just think it includes the opportunity for us to help each other and live a better life. Mm-hmm. Education is an enabler of freedom, because the more you learn, the more you can do, the more you're freed of the bonds. I call these mental chains that we have. Mm-hmm. No one is preventing us from being happy. We're preventing ourselves sometimes from being happy. These are bonds that we have. So when I say freedom, I don't just mean freedom in the traditional sense. I mean, there is mental freedom, there's physical freedom, there's emotional freedom, and all of these things, all of these forms of freedom are within our control. Mm-hmm. And yet we go through life sometimes, even, let me give you an example, even someone physically constrained. Nelson Mandela was in jail for over 20 years. Physical constraint, no freedom. While in jail, he learned law. He was accused of turning the prison into a school. Mm. And he came out of that prison with a sense of gratitude. How in the world does a human being, after being imprisoned for over 20 years, come out with a sense of gratitude? It was his choice. He chose to, in that experience, make the best of it, use it to learn, and come out with a sense of compassion for his jailers. Mm-hmm. Not hatred, not anger, which I don't know if I could have done that. But he had a sense of compassion and became president of the country following that. Could have sought retribution, could have sought revenge, all kinds of things, but instead came out as a better human being for that experience. It just goes to show you that any one of us, regardless of the physical binds that we have or mental, has an ability to overcome that by taking control of our own destiny. And to me, education is one of those pathways to be able to find our own sense of freedom.
Yeah. Because anybody in that situation, being in the jail for 20 years, would, like you said, would be very angry, or they'd be stuck on this one idea that they're not free, or trauma that might come with, and how much, like you said, our own beliefs or our own ideologies or the things that we've experienced really holds us back in a way. And sometimes that's, at least I see that with people that don't want to heal themselves in terms of maybe relationships or partnerships, or just saying that this happened to me, but there's a mindset of like, this happened for you.
Yeah.
And how, this whole victim mentality, we'd rather have ourselves just sit in this pity or depression or sadness instead of going out and seeing that as opportunity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see it all the time. And here's what causes it to some extent. Go back to the third grade when you may have wanted to answer a question and you'd say, I know, teacher, I know. You'd probably get attacked for that by your peers who were saying, hey, don't do that. You're making us look bad, right? You know, what do you want to be? Do you want to be that do you want to be that kid? Do you want to be that teacher's pet? And what they're doing is imposing their will on your identity. They're trying to tell you who you should be and what you should be. You see this in the classroom. You see this in marriages, sadly, that someone wants to control their spouse and determine who they should be and tell them who they should be, put them in a box. You see this in countries where a leader will tell the people what they should think, who they should be, how they should act. And all of these are forms of they're forms of constraint that each of us has the ability to overcome. We can choose not to allow someone else to impose their vision of who we are on us. And that once you're freed of that, once you allow yourself to get out of those perceptions that someone else may have of you and to create your own identity, then you're free.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know that. So I know that from experience of terms of what other people feel like you should do with your life. Because I guess to give you better context, as I just graduated college, and I've been doing the podcast for 2 to 3 years now. And usually when people ask me, what do you do? I tell them, I do a podcast. I have a podcast. But right now there's no monetary value in people and sponsorships or people paying me. And sometimes that road can be very lonely.
Wait, you charged me for this. I'm kidding. Sorry. You'll have to cut that out.
That's okay. I'll leave that in. In a sense of, well, actually, I did charge you because your time. I guess your time is a very valuable thing. But not many people see the return on investment. And,
right.
Trying to explain that to other people, it can be pretty lonely and pretty daunting.
Yeah.
Because when people ever ask you, your parents ask you, well, you're not making money from it, so find a real job.
Yeah.
How do people in that circumstance where those limitations are put on them and those perceptions, and it's kind of like this weird, eerie noise that's really like an earphone, really in your ear, how do they kind of take that out and kind of listen to what they want to do?
It's your choice. When Steve Jobs was out, working in his garage, he had probably his parents saying, what the heck are you doing? Go get a real job. Why are you doing this? And he made the choice to stay with it. He blocked out those who were telling him what he should be and what he should do. And each of us has that choice. It's it takes strength, though. And this is where I say the learning, the ability to learn, gives you the opportunity to create your own identity, and it gives you the confidence to create your own identity. You and your capacity right now are in a cutting edge, whole new environment. Media is changing from long form to short form. You're a pioneer in this new realm. What you may appreciate it. What many people don't appreciate is how much you're learning in this capacity. So even though you're not making money, you're learning. And that learning will give you the freedom to do so many other things. You can either be wildly successful in this new genre, in which case the money will come, or you can take the learning from your experience in this new genre and apply it to something else that will help you succeed in that realm. And so none of this is a waste, but you have to be able to have your own sense of confidence that I'm on a path. I know what I'm doing. I don't need the money right now for happiness. I'm happy doing what I'm doing, and therefore this is the right path for me.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that reassurance. I often tell people too is that I have learned more in interviewing other people, and then I probably, maybe if I reflect on it enough, maybe in my education.
Yeah.
Just because hearing life experiences from other people is a way to also be educated as well, in terms of your own life, and maybe they'll give you things that maybe they wouldn't have done in their life.
Sure.
And they'll give you those types of nuggets. And you also mentioned that in the book is that the real richness from life comes from life experiences and not money. And when I read that, I was like, man, that just resonated so deeply, because I've learned more in my life and through my own failures, or through my own beautiful mistakes, as I like to call them, and the obstacles that I've tried to go over, than and learning from other people's experiences,
Sure,
than I ever had probably in my education.
I love what you just said. Beautiful mistakes.
Yeah.
When have you ever? I don't believe I've ever heard anybody quite as eloquently describe it as beautiful mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
But you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
If you learn from your mistakes, then they're not mistakes. They're just it's just another form of tuition.
Yeah. When did you realize, because I was curious about this, when did you realize that you wanted to be in business?
I didn't. I'm still not sure. I'm trying to decide what I want to do when I grow up. I know, it's crazy, right? I had no exposure to business, so I never ever grew up thinking I want to be CEO of a big company. I didn't even know what that was. So my definition of success, looking around my little, very, very small world view at the time, was, well, lawyers wear suits. They look pretty fancy. Maybe that must be a good profession. Originally, I thought doctor, but then I thought, no, there's a lot of gross stuff that happens. And I'm not good with gross. So I kind of quickly switched my focus and said, maybe a lawyer. I can like wear a suit to work. And I started down that path. I was a political science undergraduate. I worry sometimes people try to force kids at a very young age into, what do you want to be? You have to decide. Do you want to be an engineer? Do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be a lawyer? I mean, we don't know when we're 18 years old. We haven't seen the world. So it's almost a disservice to push someone too early into a stereotype, a box. That's, again, someone else imposing their view of success and happiness onto an individual.
Mm-hmm.
But I was one of those kids. I had no idea. So I started out on this path to be a lawyer, and I had a professor intercept me in college and say, you're going to make a terrible lawyer. I'm a little ADD too. He's like, you really want to sit and look at contracts, for hours on end? Or do you want to be interacting with people and doing other things? He talked me into pursuing a joint degree, at least a JD MBA. Columbia University had just begun that degree program, that joint degree program. And I applied on a whim. I did not think I would get into Columbia University, nor did I think I could ever afford Columbia University.
Mm-hmm.
I got in, and then now I'm in, and it's like, oh, great. Now I can't afford it, but how do I not do this? And so I just figured it out. Between, working a lot of jobs and some scholarship money, a little tiny bit of scholarship money and a lot of loans, it turned out to be a great investment.
Yeah. Did you ever think when you were a kid that you would have ever achieved the things that you've achieved?
I had a lot of dreams as a kid. I grew up in that era of the Buzz Aldrins of the world and Charlie Dukes of the world walking on the moon and doing great things. And I was inspired to some extent because these were ordinary people. Mm-hmm. These were not fancy rich people that went to the very best schools. We were pretty ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Mm-hmm. And so I was inspired by them in the sense that maybe I can do that. Maybe I could walk on the moon one day. Maybe I could go to space. Maybe I could, do anything I want to do. I wonder how I do that. And it was pretty clear at the time that they achieved that level of success because they were smart. Mm-hmm. They dedicated themselves to their education and learning. And so that inspired me to just dive in. It's like, that's what it takes, I can do it.
Yeah, it seemed that your curiosity you led with curiosity
I did.
throughout your whole life.
I did. I still do.
Yeah.
Every day.
What? Because I would subscribe to that I tried to lean into my curiosity. Why don't we lean into that? Why don't we lean into that little voice?
Because we suppress it from the time. I think it's natural. If you look at any kid is curious.
Yeah.
But what do we usually tell them when they keep asking why? Shut up. Tired of that. Just, go play. and some of us take that very seriously, and we stop asking why. We stop being curious. I mean, I'll give you a great example. Sitting here, you've got this crazy little device sitting on this desk in the studio, and I'm like, what's that?
It's just that funny.
Right? And I'm sitting here going, wow, look at this. And it plays music. And so I'm just like, I want to take this home with me and learn how to play it, because it's a beautiful sound. I started playing with it, and I realized you can do like one note, or you can go, and you can play a harmony on it just by using two notes at the same time. And it's like, wow. And I've never seen this device ever before, but I'm so curious that I'd love to learn how to play it.
Yeah.
And that's just, I allow myself to be curious. And I think that's the difference. Most of us don't. Most of us look at something new and say, ooh, what's that? That looks weird. I don't even know what it is. Never mind touch it. I immediately want to try it. Mm-hmm. And let's see if I can make some noise out of it. And hey, maybe I can make a harmony out of it. Yeah. Hey, maybe I can write a song on this. And that's what curiosity is. It's just like unbridled creativity.
What do you believe do you believe that is a prerequisite to success? Like if success was a college course, what do you believe are the prerequisites to reach that level of success?
Yeah, I've broken it down into the book, and I talk about those prerequisites. And the first is what you have to learn. Change, because change is inevitable. Got to deal with it. Confidence. You have to believe that you can do something before you can do it. Mm-hmm. And clarity, the ability to simplify. That's a very complex device, but it's really not. If I simplify it, it's just a series of notes. Let me start with one note at a time. Oh, and then I can do harmony. And then I can go from simple to more complex. So what to learn? Change, confidence, clarity. How to learn then is you've got to have curiosity, right? So as you could see, I'm really curious about that device. Creativity then kicks in. How do I get creative in playing this device? How do I unleash that creativity? And then critical thinking comes into play with the how to learn, because if we just take at face value everything we see or hear, we'll never learn. We've got to have that critical thinking with the ability to ask why. So those are the how to learn. And then finally, the why of learning, I think, is collaboration, because we're in this world with other people. We have to learn how to get along and work together. Cultural literacy, because the world is full of people that are different from us. The more we understand about them and their differences, the more effective we can be in working together. And then finally, character, that idea that each of us has a brand. We walk around with a brand on our chest. We don't realize it. But it's not just external. Our appearance is packaging. Call it packaging. Coke versus Pepsi. You want a red can or a blue can, right? Packaging. But what's more important in people who prefer Coke versus Pepsi is what's inside. And in both cases, they know the integrity of that product versus something they've never seen before. But then there's different elements inside that one person prefers over the other. Each of us has a brand in the same way. Our integrity is what people can count on when they work and interact with us. And our gratitude and our humility, those are all elements of our character that really represent the brand that's right across our chest. And you see it when you interact with me. I see it when I interact with you. The more I get to know you, the more I get to know your brand and your character. And those are the elements that I think are critical elements of success, and how people are able to then enjoy whatever they want to do.
Yeah. Take me through your time as a CEO, as I've never, really understood. You hear people now say that I want to become an entrepreneur, CEO, but they don't know really what it takes to get there. They don't really know how to get there, but they want to become this thing. What was your time like as a CEO of 7-Eleven and Blockbuster?
To me, it was quite a grand adventure from day one. Bumps in the road. We had a lot of bumps in the road. The company went through some really turbulent times. Filed for bankruptcy in 1991, almost went away. 7-Eleven was not a straight line path to success. But at every one of those bad things that happened, there were opportunities within, both for me personally and for the company that reinvented itself along the way. So I just found it to be a fabulous experience because I was able to leverage my ability to deal with change, my sense of confidence, and my clarity, my ability to take complex problems and simplify them. Those three things really helped propel my career. I call them my gift. And it sounds a bit obnoxious to say I'm gifted, but no, these are things that really drove my career. If you asked for me to narrow it down, change, confidence, clarity, those are the three things that I would say propelled my ability to ultimately lead a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah. What was, because I know that, the bankruptcy, would you describe that as a beautiful failure? Or
Yeah.
what would you describe as
Beautiful mistake.
Yeah, beautiful mistake. Would you describe that as your most beautiful mistake, or would there be something else in your life that you describe as that?
I've had a lot of them, but to your point, every time I make a mistake, I learn from it, and I walk away now with a better set of skills, a better set of tools in my toolkit to be able to deal with the next crisis, the next challenge that I encounter. You learn basically from every step of it. 7-Eleven was one. Blockbuster was almost a mirror image of 7-Eleven. People lose so much value in their false perception that Netflix crushed Blockbuster. Netflix is great. I'm a big Netflix fan. Big fan of Reed Hastings, the management team, Ted, the co-CEO. But what happened to Blockbuster was almost a mirror image of what happened to 7-Eleven. Kind of lost their way in defining the business, what they wanted to be. Had a lot of debt, just like 7-Eleven. Got caught up in a financial crisis, just like 7-Eleven. Forced to file for bankruptcy, just like 7-Eleven. A chance to reinvent themselves. My partner that I selected in helping take it to the next level was Dish Network. It was Dish that ultimately chose to shut down the stores. They had a change in their direction, and they decided not to pursue the continuation of the streaming that Blockbuster had already started. But it is what it is. The two business models, from a business perspective, were almost a mirror image. One, convenience retail. One, convenient access to media entertainment. Even the core business proposition, very much similar, much more similar than people think. And both needed to evolve. Both did evolve. Both got caught up in financial crises. The outcome of 7-Eleven, with a good partner, 7-Eleven Japan came in and helped us reemerge from bankruptcy, helped us redefine the business concept, and helped us succeed. Dish Network, unfortunately, had a change in direction and chose not to go forward. But that was a conscious decision as opposed to a failure.
Yeah. Do you often think about the things that you would have done different?
Oh, lots of things I would do different. First thing I would have done different, I tried to buy Blockbuster and take it private. That was my original objective. Had we done that in 2007, we would have sailed through the financial crisis without batting an eyelash. And it would have Blockbuster today, I believe, would have been far bigger than Netflix today because we were the aggregator. We weren't a new content originator. We weren't a studio. We were the aggregator of content and distributor of content, and we would have basically been the primary source for streaming video. We had a deal at one point with Google that would have been everything free YouTube, everything paid content, Blockbuster.
Wow.
That would have been a game changer. Yeah, it was huge. And that deal only got derailed because of the financial crisis and the potential threat of bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
Blockbuster caused Google to have to walk away from the deal.
Yeah, because I think about that because I went to Blockbuster as a kid, and it was like cool to see that I was going to be able to interview you, somebody that I would go, when I was around that time, actually, ironically, when I was going to Blockbuster, as a kid, I would always have the post reports or grade reports, and I had to get a certain grade to go get some video games or go get all of those, go get a movie and whatnot. So it's very cool to see, but I think more importantly, the reflection of what you would have done different, and how have you not been able to like ruminate in that?
It's not personal. You give it your best shot. If you give it your best shot and give yourself the best chance of success, not every at-bat's going to be a home run.
Yeah.
The way I look at my career, I've had 2 or 3 at-bats. I've had 1 home run and a couple of long flyouts, but I'm still at the plate.
Mm-hmm. How do you, one thing that came up was, how do you want to be remembered? Like, if besides being a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, how do you want to be remembered as a human, or as a thinker, or as a philanthropist? Like, if there's something that you wanted to be remembered for, what would that be?
My dream is just to be able to have people, when they think of me someday and maybe long after I'm gone, if I can have people, when they pull up some historical reference to what I contributed to the planet, if I can change one life, with the ability to encourage people to use learning to change their life and to allow them to fulfill their true opportunity, full potential, then I've succeeded. That's really, I'll never be known as some great business person or this or that. I just hope I'm known as someone who helped change lives for the better.
Something that I was thinking about, how your dad was very influential towards your life, and how one quote is that, "To my father who taught me how to fish."
Yeah.
And just your interactions with him, he said to you, the absolute key to freedom is to learn as much as you can every day of your life.
Yeah.
Is there a conversation that you would love to have with your dad now about life itself?
Yeah, you learn a lot when you're out fishing, and I meant that quite literally. We used to fish a lot, just go down to the local pond, a worm on the end, and bobber out there, and it gave you a good chance to chat. And I think the thing that was most powerful about his messages is that even though he didn't have money, he had a richness of life. He was very grateful for the life, as challenging it was, that he led. And he had a profound appreciation for other cultures and other people, which was really unusual for a guy that, worked in a factory in Massachusetts. But he was in World War II. And World War II did some really interesting things too, but for the greatest generation. It exposed them to other cultures in a way that helped America be what America is today. He was not intimidated or afraid of people from different lands. He saw them with curiosity and with that sense of ability to learn from them. So he used to talk to me about his time on the Burma Road. And when he was a truck driver on the Burma Road as they were building this road across the country to be able to help the war efforts. And he was fascinated by the people there and their culture and how different they were and how kind they were. And he used to always say, basically, you know, the more you can learn from other people, the better off you'll be. And he gave me that experience, brought some friends actually that were in the United States to our very, very simple house. I've got an old video clip that it's actually one of those little Super 8 movie things. I don't know how in the world somebody filmed this, but it was a hula dancer and her husband, and he was a musician and she was a dancer, and they actually came to our house and performed their native dance that they would do back in Hawaii. And they ultimately then went back to Hawaii. But that cultural experience of seeing something so foreign as a little kid was one of those things that helped to form me and my curiosity about the world and the planet that we live on. Mm-hmm. So that'd be the nature of the conversation today. Would be like, where else should I visit? What else should I learn?
You think he'd be proud of you?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
probably.
Does it one thing that really that sits on my mind is that I guess when I was reading that and not being able to see the trajectory of your career, I often think about that with my mom, and yeah. she's very important to me, and not seeing. She always tells me that I'll be successful in whatever I choose, which is always a reassuring comment to hear from a parent. But
sure,
I think there's a certain level of of how much I want to do and achieve while she's still here.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel that once you got to the certain heights that you're like, damn, my dad would have loved to see this. Yeah. My parents would have loved to see what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, probably. I mean, my dad passed when I was 12, so that was pretty early on.
Yeah.
My mother when I was like 30, something like that. So, yeah. But you know, I still think they know.
Yeah. Because I don't know, that's just something that weighs on me a lot, and I wanted to know if that was just something that you've experienced as well, or you thought.
Yeah, you know, you always wanna please your parents and make them proud of what you've become or what you've done. But you know, at the end of the day, life is life, and you're gonna lose them at some point, and. Yeah. The question is that the end? I am a big, I won't get religious on you, but I'm a pretty spiritual guy. And I believe that we have this physical body, but that our energy in some capacity lives on. And that, and so I kind of take faith in the idea that the energy doesn't really go away. It's just manifests itself in a different place, in a different form, different capacity, but that it's still there.
Yeah, I do believe that as well. I think that even though our physical body here, that our energy or our soul will be manifested into something else.
Yeah,
I guess a example that I always like to have is that I never met my grandfather, but you know, my family always tells me that I'm a lot like him.
Yeah.
So maybe his soul manifested into mine, or maybe it kind of transferred over in a way.
You know what's really beautiful to that point. I've been traveling all over the world. I've been in Israel. I've been in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. I've been in Asia, all over Asia, and Buddhist country and Hindu country. And the one common theme that I find with this. As many disputes as people have over religion, and they tend to focus on the differences that we have. And that always amazes me, because the one common theme that I find in virtually all religions is this idea of faith in our energy and our ability to live beyond in some fashion. That is a common theme throughout. And I actually quote Yoda when you may have heard me do this, but I love the example, because he talks so much about when he's teaching Luke He's talking about the force. And the force is a beautiful metaphor for that energy that we have that represents our faith and our ability to overcome anything. And that energy, I hope, and they didn't really talk about it in Star Wars, but that energy doesn't just go away. It doesn't just dissipate when you die. It manifests itself in some different capacity. Some religions call it heaven. Some religions call it reincarnation. Who knows?
Yeah.
That's one of the great mysteries of life. But if you do have that belief in a greater opportunity, let's say, then that, I think, is what brings us together rather than divides us.
Yeah, I often think about that too, because I had a conversation on a podcast with somebody, and I just kind of asked them, like, why don't we just come together? Like, why is it so easy for us to just divide? Why is it so easy for us to just point out our differences in one another or our differences in belief, as opposed to just saying, well, I understand your belief, but I think there's a more important cause here that if we just all come together.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's that government's fear that if that happens, what that could do to humanity, or other people in society fear that. But I've always wondered that why, instead of just pointing out differences or what somebody else believes in as opposed to us, why don't we just put those differences aside?
Well, we're mammals at the end of the day. And I know we don't like to think of ourselves that way, because we have arguably more than just thumbs. We have a bigger brain that allows us to have critical thinking, and yet we revert back to our sort of mammal selves and become tribal.
Yeah.
We run with the herd. And I like to use the analogy of a zebra. When a lion attacks a zebra, they'll kill each other to get to the center of the herd for safety, because in that herd is where they find safety, and it's fear. And it's that thing that forces that zebra to seek safety in the herd is the same thing that humans revert to when they're in a board meeting and half of the people think one way and the other half of the people think another way, or they've got a new idea or a threat. They'll revert to that same portion of the brain that causes them to seek comfort in the center of the herd.
Mm-hmm.
We're humans.
Yeah.
And we're mammals. And we're vulnerable to that. But that is, again, not just our thumbs. We also have a prefrontal cortex that allows us to do critical thinking to eliminate that fear that drives us back into the herd, that causes us to be tribal. Each of us as individuals has control over our identity so that we're the herd. We don't have to seek comfort in the herd.
Yeah.
We can seek comfort in ourselves.
I guess also too, another thought that came up is that, do you think that we lack empathy or compassion in terms of understanding one another?
Not unless we're threatened, and then as soon as we're threatened, we throw it all aside. We throw our values aside. I in the course of writing this book, I tried to understand this, because I was like, okay, I'm writing this book about education and how important it is to be intelligent. And then I look through history, and how many examples do we have of very intelligent societies doing really, really stupid stuff, right? How do I explain that? So I started digging in. And the more I dug in to this idea that intelligent people do stupid things, why? And especially with some of the polarization that's going on today, we've got families fighting each other over what, right? Why is this? And I found a term that was used back in the 1940s, that a scientist came up with this thing called militant ignorance. Mm-hmm. Militant ignorance, he defined as when you know better, when you're smart enough to know better, when you have a set of values, but you'll take an entirely different position because those who you are influenced by believe that is true. And you'll literally park your values and park your knowledge, your judgment, and instead go with the tribe because that's what they believe. And then you'll fight to the death over that. And it's that manifestation of that caveman brain, of that amygdala taking over your better judgment, blocking out your prefrontal cortex, blocking out your critical thinking, stopping you from recognizing that this is wrong. This is very wrong. This is a total violation of my values personally, but I'm going to go with the tribe because they think it's right. You see it all the time throughout history. That is what I'm hoping to get across to each of us, that the future is in your hands. It is up to you not to be victim, not to be tribal, to be human, and to use the advantage that we have as humans to have critical thinking and to make our own judgment. That is true freedom. That is why education is freedom. That's why humans will always be more free than other mammals. Mm-hmm. If we use that.
Yes. Because there is a lot of misinformation nowadays. So there is a lot of I don't know if you would call it miseducation, but education now, because of the uses of social media, that isn't always accurate or isn't always the correct quote unquote way of handling things. Do you foresee that I know that you're probably going to say the choice of the human, but do you believe that the misinformation now from people that are experts or leaders in this field, that they can stray them away from the actual way of thinking?
Yeah, there's two ways to inspire people. You can inspire people through fear, or you can inspire people, or there's two ways to lead, to get people to do what you want to do. You can either scare them and trigger that caveman brain, because it's easy to trigger, or you can inspire them. Pick one. We happen to be in a time where many of our leaders are choosing to use fear. They are presenting themselves as victims. It's kind of an odd thing if you think about it, for a leader to say, "Whoa, we collectively are being picked on by others. We're being abused. We're being taken advantage of," and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of like, you would think it's the antithesis of leadership, is to be one of these people that uses victimhood as a lever. But if your tribe sees themselves also as victims, you're tapping into the very thing that is triggering their caveman brain, and it's causing them to want to follow you. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, yeah, you're right. I have been picked on. I have been taken advantage of. You're the guy that will help me fix that, as opposed to, wait, if I'm being taken advantage of, if I'm a victim, I'm the one that has to fix that, not some leader that's going to do that for me.
Yeah.
But that's what happens, sadly. And again, and here's the irony. Those who are screaming loudest about fake news are often the ones delivering the fake news. Right?
Yeah.
And that makes it even more important, since there's a barrage of fake news coming from all kinds of directions. Mm-hmm. That makes it even more important for us to not be swayed by either direction, but to make our own choices.
Yeah. We talked about, little ways to inspire, but what do you believe makes a good leader? As you've been a leader yourself and probably have witnessed other leaders, what do you believe makes a really good leader?
Here's what I recommend people to look for in selecting their leader, because we all have to rely on someone to lead us in some fashion, whether you're in a company or a society, a country. I have found that the best form of leadership is those leaders who find win-win solutions. I'll give you a corporate example. In Japan, they have I learned this from my Japanese business partners. They have a concept called Kyozen Kyoe, sort of mutual co-prosperity. You win, I win. Let's work together Let's find a solution that lets us both succeed. I love that concept. It's very counter to some who think that capitalism is about I'm going to win and you lose. So if we're negotiating, the more I can take on my side of the table is better. But that's not that always works perhaps in the short term. But that doesn't allow for sustainable success. Mm-hmm. Sustainable success is more an open book approach that says, okay, let me look at your balance sheet, look at my balance sheet, share your revenues, and I'll share my revenues, and let's both find a way that we can make the most money together. It's not common here in the United States. The Japanese have perfected it in a lot of ways, and I've learned from them that carries over into a different style of leadership. There's a style of leadership that is win-lose. I'm going to negotiate with you, and I win at your expense. There's another style of negotiation that says, let's find a way that we both win, that 1 + 1 truly does equal 3, not, I have 2 and you have 1, but together we have 3. Let's find a way to do that. So that's my recommendation, to find leaders who will seek that win-win solution as opposed to leaders who are trying to claw too much back to them or see themselves as being taken advantage of or victims or whatever.
Mm-hmm. What are some, we talked, I wanted to kind of expand on that a little bit further, dig deeper in that. What are some qualities in a person that might be listening to this that wants to become a leader? What are some characteristics or things that they should do within themselves to become that leader?
Yeah, change, confidence, clarity. Those 3 things are critically important. Leaders have to. Leadership is about changing. There's all kinds of books on leadership. Leadership by servant leadership. I'm going to be your servant, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff. Leadership by walking around, leadership by this, leadership by that. I think it's leadership by learning, because the reality is the macro environment, whether you're leading a Boy Scout troop, a country, or a corporation, the macro environment is always going to present challenges. There will always be something that changes, that's out of your control. How you respond to it as a leader makes all the difference between success and failure. And if you as a leader can respond in a proactive, positive way, rather than being the victim, reverting to your caveman brain, that form of leadership, being able to find that win-win solution in a time of change, I think is critically important.
Mm-hmm. What did leadership cost you? Was there anything that people don't see, right? Because I know sometimes I've heard from people that are, uberly successful. It's cost them relationships. It's cost them marriage. It's cost them, peace of mind. It's cost them time, obviously. What has being a leader in your tenure as a leader, what has that cost you?
I don't think it's cost me a thing. I look at it as an investment. So I'll compare it to school. Some people say, oh, school's too expensive, I can't afford it. Oh. There's no investment that you make that gives an immediate return. Right? This is the question of how long you're willing to wait. Is your IRR calculation going to be based on 5 years or 20 years? And depending on that calculation, that'll determine how much you're willing to invest right now. Same thing with a college education. People say, oh my gosh, I can't afford all these loans. The average return for a college education today, based on current rates, is a 15% IRR. That's a good business investment. People don't look at it that way. They say, oh, they're trying to make it pay in today's dollars, not in the discounted cash flow rate. I'm getting all technical business on you, but not on the discounted cash flow of future income streams, which is the way you measure any investment opportunity as a business person. Now take that away from measurable and say, okay, well, what have I sacrificed? Not time, not dollars, but just what have I sacrificed to be successful, to be a leader? I again look at it as an investment. I haven't sacrificed a thing, because the payout continues today. So I spent a tremendous amount of time. I sacrificed a lot where others were driving fancy cars, where others were living grand lifestyles. I was working my butt off and not making a lot of money at times. But that was an investment, like tuition, in a future income stream. But since we're not talking about cash, my income, my benefit now is a tremendous amount of freedom that I have today to do this, to travel the world, to talk to people about leading a better life. This is all the freedom that I've earned from the investment I made over many, many years to build that leadership capability.
The reason why I ask that is because I often hear people that are trying to build a business or building something that is incredibly great. They push love away. They push relationships away. They push their friends, their family away to really build this thing. And I was curious to find out what that was for you. Because as I research, you aren't married. So I wanted to be able to know, like, is there...
I am.
Oh, you are? Okay,
Yeah.
then the internet lied to me. Internet often does that.
Yeah, my wife's watching this.
Yeah.
Like, what? Dude? Something I should know?
Yeah. No. Was there anything in that time, like, was there a dark time where you had to push those things away?
No. There is. I'll share with you. You want to get personal, I'll get personal. I don't have any children today because I did push off marriage for a long time. I was working very, very hard, and I wanted to make sure I had the right partner that was, this is an important piece of advice for anyone, to have that complete candor with your partner, whoever it is, about what you want out of life. Because if one partner wants a comfortable, happy, lots of free time marriage, and the other partner wants to work their butt off and be successful for a return 20 years from now, you're going to clash. And it will result in a lot of unhappiness. So I pushed that decision off to find the right partner that I could have that mutual agreement that I'm investing now for a future life. And I may have erred on the side of pushing that a little too far because I didn't get married till I was almost 40. And so I don't have children today as a result. In hindsight, if I could do anything over, I would have probably married at a younger age, had children, had a family. I left that on the table. And there's a reality of a clicking clock, of a ticking clock, when it comes to all of us, whether we're male or female. I guess my advice to someone that's younger would be a little cautious of it, and don't let your future returns get in the way of your family considerations too.
Yeah, because as we were speaking about investments, I often hear that is one of the biggest investments you'll ever make is the person that you choose to marry and the person that you choose to be by your side, just because that can be able to dictate a lot of how your future may go with that person.
Yeah, it's pretty important.
Yeah. Is there any advice that you'd give your let's say 30-year-old self, your 25-year-old self? Is there something that you would probably sit down if I was that person, right? And I was younger Jim.
Chill.
What would you
No, it's serious. We're all freaked out about the future. Oh my God, am I going to be okay? What's going to happen? Yeah, it's going to be okay. Yeah. That's what I would tell myself. Chill. You're cool.
We often do think about that. I am a person that thinks in the future a lot. So
yeah. It's easy to worry.
Yeah.
Every second of worry is total waste of time.
Could be using that time to doing other things.
Yeah. But we all do it.
Yeah.
Easy to say.
What are you most proud of?
I'll tell you what makes me proud. Yesterday I had a gentleman come up to me and say, I heard you speak 15 years ago and it changed my life. Your advice was so valuable and I'm grateful for that impact you had. Like I said, at the end of the day, we're all here for a pretty short period of time. If we can lift others up and help them succeed, that's worth more than money. So yeah, that's what I'm proud of.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything? What's next for you besides, obviously? Do you plan on writing another book? Like, what could we expect next out of Jim?
I have no idea. Life is an adventure, and to me, every day is a new adventure. I literally woke up this morning. I was like, "Yeah, what do I get to do today?" And I I knew this was on the calendar, and I was looking forward to this. And then I had a random call because I posted some silly thing about some window washers outside of my room. And another friend said, "Hey, I'm in New York. You want to film some content?" So I'll go film some content today. Last week, I had an opportunity to speak in Monaco, of all places, one of my favorite places in the world. I love southern coast of France, and I love Monaco. And I had a chance to speak there. It just happened to be Formula One weekend. Mm-hmm. So I had to stay, of course, for Formula One weekend. I also have a friend that I went to school with from England who lives now in Monaco. So I was able to not only visit with an old friend, but enjoy the Formula One Grand Prix from the balcony of his condo overlooking the track. Mm-hmm. And these are adventures that I am able to have because of that investment that I made over many, many years. And now I'm enjoying some of those returns mm-hmm. from that investment. So what's going forward? I don't know. All I know is that it will be an adventure because every day I wake up and I allow myself the opportunistic chance, if you will, to take advantage of new opportunities that may come my way.
Mm-hmm. You talked about, creating more content. How do you believe social media is going to impact business?
I don't know. And that's the reality. None of us know. But I do see it as a new form. And, let me equate it back to when the printing press was first invented. People were afraid of books. They were like, you can't let a kid read a book by themselves because we taught one-on-one. It was all verbal. And now all of a sudden we had information. And then we had pamphlets, and those pamphlets circulated. And it kind of, you think about the French Revolution, American Revolution, would those have happened without this now flood of information that did what? That triggered people, get them all wired up and worried about taxation without representation. And then they took up arms because they were so worked up over all this stuff. Well, all of that change is happening right now because we haven't had such a flood of information available to us since the invention of the printing press. Think about it. When I grew up, we had 4 TV stations. That was it. Mm. And a handful of books. I learned from an encyclopedia as opposed to YouTube, right? Or Wikipedia. So what does that mean for now? That means that we are in this period of change. That information is coming at warp speed, something that humanity has never seen before. It's creating unbelievable opportunities that we don't even know yet. And you're out here on the cutting edge of those opportunities, again, not knowing what the future will be, but positioning yourself to take advantage opportunistically mm-hmm. of this new medium. It will continue to evolve at rapid speed because AI now is going to change this game in an even more exponential way. Mm-hmm. But to me, all of this represents opportunity. I've coined the expression in my book, change equals opportunity. Acronym CEO. Be CEO of your own life. Grab onto that change. Don't fear what AI is going to do. Embrace it and recognize that this is an opportunity that humanity, that mankind has never seen before. We can either sit around and say, oh my gosh, what's it going to do? It's going to change everything. Yeah, be the one on the leading edge of that change to manage that opportunity going forward and help humanity.
I think so many people are worried about that it'll take their jobs. That's what I see a lot on the news, is that people are worried about AI,
I know.
taking their jobs.
They worried about that with the internet.
Yeah.
So stop, think about it. Oh my gosh, the internet's going to kill retail. 7-Eleven will be dead. Everything will be delivered, blah, blah, blah. No, it created new ways for 7-Eleven to deliver product. 7-Eleven can now partner with Uber Eats and deliver product to the home. Uber didn't exist, right? All we had is taxis. It created whole new industries.
Yeah.
Whole new industries that we never even envisioned. You couldn't have cryptocurrency without the internet. It's created an entirely new approach to money, to value. And so all of these are brand new industries that did not exist before the internet. So we're afraid of AI. We're going, oh my God, it's going to take away my jobs. AI is going to create opportunities that we don't even know exist right now.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the biggest thing I get excited about with AI. You said yourself, little ADD, have a little trouble reading.
Mm-hmm.
AI is going to allow your kids to learn at the same exponential rate that machine learning facilitates. So I'll give you an example. When self-driving cars first came out, they were killing people. They were running into shit. They were just like, it wasn't a good experience. Why? It's because humans were programming the AI to teach the car how to drive, basically, with our rules. And then finally, in the last 5 years, we realized, oh shit, let's let the machine teach the machine. And we use machine learning to teach machine learning, and exponentially it's like, got this. And now self-driving cars, we've got trucks on the road right now between Dallas and Austin, semis, fully autonomous. It's wild that this is even possible. But that was the breakthrough. It was machine to machine learning exponentially helped solve a problem. Think about how that applies to humans. We teach humans based on human rules. Here's how you have to learn to read. See Dick run with Spot and Jane, right? In a primary reader. AI is going to deliver that content because you may be a little ADD the way you learn it best, and help you learn to read 10 times as fast. Now, if you can learn to read 10 times as fast and effectively, what else can you do? Mm-hmm. How can you do math? It's going to deliver math to you in a different way, and your knowledge of science and your ability to be a technology person, whatever you want to be. So it's machine learning that will help human learning expand at the exponential rate of machine learning, right? That is what I get excited about. It's truly going to change the game when humans can advance the way we learn. And you know what my big hope is? That acceleration of human learning helps us learn that we can manage our amygdala and instead use our prefrontal cortex, that we can manage our caveman brain and stop it from behaving with militant ignorance or tribal behavior, and instead that it will give us, as humans, more ability to manage our own destiny and not have to follow the tribe, follow the pack, and be led around by others. It's potentially the saving grace, if you think about it, for humanity. So some may look at AI and say, oh my gosh, machines are going to take us over. I look at it and say, AI is going to help us be better humans.
And it all stems from fear. It always does, because the worry about what it's going to do.
It all comes back to fear.
Yeah.
And it's a natural, very human instinct, but to the extent we can overcome it, change equals opportunity.
Yeah.
Tremendous opportunity.
Do you think in the wrong hands though it could do?
Of course it can. Everything in the wrong hands. When someone invented fire, right? The guy's wife said, put that out, you're going to burn down the cave. And then somebody else said, don't let anybody else know about that because we need to use that against them. It's natural. It's fear. Instead of saying, wow, fire. Whoa, what could we all do with this? Let's share this technology, this new idea, and let's all live happier and better.
Mhm.
Somebody said, well, yeah, but what if they weaponize it and use it against me? So throughout history, this is not new. Mankind reverts to that fear, and it causes us to do stupid things. My question is, did you see the movie Oppenheimer?
No, I didn't.
It's an interesting.
I heard it's a great movie, though.
It's a great movie, and if anyone saw the movie, Oppenheimer was faced with a dilemma. He was helping to advance this idea of this weapon that could cause mutual mass destruction of the planet, and he was worried about it. And in the movie, I hope this was actually his thought. He believed that this was a righteous role that he was playing because he truly believed that a weapon so powerful would stop humanity from behaving like cavemen. It would force us to come together as one people and find solutions, not weapons. And it didn't work, obviously. The Cold War evolved, and it was, I guess, maybe a belief that it wouldn't have to be mutual mass destruction. I can kill you before you kill me with this new weapon. Well, here's the question on the table. As I was watching Oppenheimer, I thought about this. Will AI present that next opportunity for humanity to develop a weapon that is so powerful that it truly does represent mutual mass destruction? And what will likely happen is at some point, someone's going to lose control over the machine, and we will see what could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question is, will that scare us enough that it forces humanity to then come together and say, all right, we as humans can either use this technology for evil or for good.
Mm-hmm.
Let's together put the rules together, and we will use this new technology to advance humanity, not for mutual mass destruction.
Yeah, I can only hope so.
I believe we will.
Yeah.
I have way more faith in humanity, which is literally why I wrote this book,
Mm-hmm.
to remind us we're better than this.
Yeah. And we can achieve more. Last question I have for you is, the world sees Jim Keyes as Jim Keyes, CEO, as all the titles that I've listed. How do you view Jim?
I'm a pretty regular guy. I relish in the idea that I came from virtually nothing, because it gives me the privilege of being able to interact with anybody anywhere in the world. If I had grown up in different circumstances, I don't think I would be as comfortable, walking this planet and recognizing that I'm not any better or any worse than anybody else on the planet. And that I'll give you my definition. I could be called arrogant sometimes because I do have a lot of confidence, and I have been called arrogant. But here's what I hope will stop people from thinking that. I believe truly that I'm smart enough to know what I don't know, and that every other human walking this planet, maybe a few animals too, know something that I don't know, and I can learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I interact with everyone with the idea, conviction that I can learn from you, whatever your race, religion, culture, background, socioeconomic status, whatever it is, if you're a street sweeper or if you're a king, I have something I can learn from you. What is it? Let me find it. And then let me take that away so that I become a patchwork quilt of all that I have learned from every human that I've interacted with throughout my lifetime. That'll make me a pretty interesting guy.
Yeah. Jim, I want to say thank you for coming on. Before I send this off, I want to thank James for allowing us to use this via Peerspace. If you guys liked, the aesthetic or the vibe of this podcast, definitely I'll leave his link below. But Jim, I want to thank you for coming on here today, for believing in me to, spend an hour and 30 of your time, and to give me a chance, truly, about just to being able to sit down with you. I'm eternally grateful, and thanks to social media that made that happen. So I want to say thank you for coming on the show today.
Appreciate the opportunity, and you said the magic word, gratitude. So I'm grateful for the opportunity as well, and I'm jealous because you're sitting on the cusp of great things. So good luck.
Thank you.